90% of Iran's oil gone the moment one more American bomb falls in the wrong place. That is not a prediction. That is the live threat sitting on the table in Washington and Tehran right now, at this exact moment, on the morning of March 15th, 2026. You need to understand what happened in the last 48 hours, because what you are about to hear is not getting the coverage it deserves. Not on your cable news channel, not in the morning papers, and certainly not in the White House briefing room. But it matters enormously to you, to your money, to your family, to the price of everything you are about to pay more for. Let me start with a fact that should stop you cold. On the night of March 13th, the United States military bombed a small island in the Persian Gulf called Kharg Island. U.S. forces executed a large-scale precision strike on Kharg Island, Iran. The strike destroyed naval mine storage facilities, missile storage bunkers, and multiple other military sites. Trump announced it himself on Truth Social, calling it one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East. And here is the part they slipped past you in the same breath. Kharg Island sits 15 miles off Iran's southern coast and is critical to the country's oil-dependent economy. Roughly 90% of Iran's export crude oil passes through it. Let that sink in for a second. The United States just bombed the island through which 90% of Iran's oil exports flow. And the only reason the oil infrastructure itself is still standing is because Trump decided personally to spare it, for now. In a Truth Social post, Trump wrote that, "For reasons of decency, I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island." But the president warned that if Iran or anyone else decided to interfere with the passage of ships in the Strait of Hormuz, he would immediately reconsider this decision. That is the ultimatum. Open the strait, or I turn off your oil economy. And Iran's answer came within hours. Iran threatened on Saturday to reduce U.S.-linked oil facilities to a pile of ashes if oil structures on the island were attacked. Think about what that means in practical terms. We are now in a standoff between two nuclear-adjacent powers, one holding a bomb over Iran's economic lifeline, the other holding a match over the Gulf's entire energy supply. And both sides are daring each other to blink first. You're watching the most dangerous game of chicken played over the world's most important body of water. And most Americans have not been told clearly what the stakes actually are. So let me tell you. About 1/5 of global oil supplies and 1/3 of fertilizers used around the world pass through the Strait of Hormuz. 1 in 5 barrels of oil on this planet moves through a waterway that is, at its narrowest point, 21 miles wide. 21 miles. And right now, Iran controls access to it, or at least is threatening to. Iran's foreign minister denied claims that Iran had fully closed the Strait of Hormuz, instead saying the passage was only blocked to vessels with ties to the U.S. and Israel. "It is only closed to American, Israeli ships and tankers, and not to others," he said. So you have partial blockage, rising threats, and an American president who just issued a public ultimatum that if the strait is further interfered with, he will bomb the island that powers Iran's entire economy. That is the situation on the ground as the sun rises on day 15, and it is getting more volatile by the hour. Now let's step back and give you the context that cable news keeps skipping. This war did not start with Kharg Island. It started on February 28th, when the United States and Israel launched simultaneous strikes on Iran, killing Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, a move that sent shockwaves through every capital on earth. On 28th of February 2026, Ali Khamenei, the Supreme Leader of Iran, was assassinated. Early on 1st March, Iranian state media announced that Khamenei had been killed. The Fars news agency, which is controlled by the IRGC, announced that Khamenei's daughter, son-in-law, grandchild, and daughter-in-law had also been killed in the strikes. Now, here's the thing about assassinating a head of state. Even one as widely despised as Khamenei, in the middle of a region full of military bases, energy infrastructure, and allied governments that were not consulted. The retaliation is not surgical. It is not targeted. It is everything, everywhere, all at once. Since February 28th, the Islamic Republic has launched over 2,000 one-way attack drones targeting U.S. forces and America's regional allies. While the vast majority have been intercepted, these drones have caused a bigger problem than the Pentagon initially anticipated. The United States and its allies have appeared to lack sufficient point defenses to intercept drones that slip past fighter jets and other air defenses. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, the UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, all of them have been hit or nearly hit. Israeli attacks have killed at least 773 people in Lebanon since March 2nd, the Lebanese Ministry of Public Health said, as Israel pledged the country would pay an increasing price in damage to infrastructure. The war has already spread beyond Iran. It has become a regional fire. And here is something that nobody in this administration wants to explain clearly. The reasons for starting this war have shifted, repeatedly, in real time. The Trump administration's reasons for entering into war have been inconsistent and vague, from regime change to the destruction of nuclear weapons, preempting military action by Israel, or the more chilling decree of following God's divine plan. On day 1, Trump said it was about preventing a nuclear bomb. By day 3, Hegseth was saying it was not a regime change war, right after the supreme leader had been assassinated. By day 5, officials were talking about Iran's natural resources. By day 10, Trump was calling it God's divine plan. You tell me which one of those is the real reason? Because the American people deserve a straight answer, and they have not gotten one. Now, what about that deal that was on the table the night before the bombs fell? This is the part of the story that should disturb you most deeply. Just before the strikes began, on February 27, 2026, Oman's foreign minister said a breakthrough had been reached, and Iran had agreed both to never stockpile enriched uranium and to full verification by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Al-Busaidi said peace was within reach. Talks were expected to resume on March the 2nd. The bombs fell on February 28th. You do not have to take a political side to ask that question. Did peace have a chance? And if it did, why was it not taken? Because the stated objective of this war, preventing Iran from building a nuclear weapon, faces a devastating reality. Arms control experts have now stated plainly that Iran still possesses the knowledge, the scientists, and the underlying expertise to build a nuclear weapon, and that no bombing campaign can erase that. You cannot drop a bunker buster on a physics equation. Let's talk about your money, because this is the part that hits you personally whether you follow geopolitics or not. The war with Iran cost more than $11.3 billion in the first 6 days. The Pentagon reportedly told members of Congress in a closed-door briefing, military actions in Iran are already costing an estimated $1 billion a day. And now, the Pentagon has put together a $50 billion supplemental budget request in order to replace Tomahawk and Patriot missiles and THAAD interceptors already used in the first week of the war, along with other equipment that had been damaged or worn out so far. $50 billion. That is on top of the billion a day that is already burning. U.S. taxpayers will bear the brunt of this war, with an estimated $65 billion direct hit for military operations, as well as the replacement of equipment, munitions, and other supplies. And while Washington writes those checks, oil and gas prices have soared since the war began. A release of 172 million barrels from the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve failed to calm investors, and the price of a barrel of crude oil rose above $100 for the first time in years. As Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren put it, while there is no money for 15 million Americans who lost their health care, there's $1 billion a day to spend on bombing Iran. That is not a partisan line. That is arithmetic. You can agree or disagree with the war, but you cannot disagree with the math. Now let's walk through what is happening this morning, March 15th, in real time, because the news from the last few hours is significant. Early on March 15th, heavy airstrikes were reported in the Isfahan area, along with 20 explosions heard near Shiraz, heavy explosions in southern Tehran, Desful Air Base, Khomeini, and Hamadan. A video showed extensive damage from an airstrike at the Jask port in Hormozgan province. That is not a de-escalation, that is an intensification. Iran will increasingly deploy upgraded weapons, including more powerful ballistic missiles, as its war with the United States and Israel continues, Iran's deputy defense minister said on Saturday. More powerful. 2 weeks in, and Iran is escalating its weapons, not exhausting them. Meanwhile, Trump has now turned to the world and asked for help securing the strait. He wrote on Truth Social, hopefully China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others that are affected by this artificial constraint will send ships to the area so that the Hormuz Strait will no longer be a threat. And the response from those nations? Trump said that hopefully China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK, and others will send naval assets to free up shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz. In responses to CNN, neither Beijing nor London confirmed whether they are sending warships to the strait. Silence from America's closest ally and its most important economic partner. When Britain and China both declined to publicly commit to helping you secure a waterway in a war you started without consulting them, that tells you something important about the diplomatic isolation the United States is experiencing right now. And there is the wild card of Russia. Russian-Iranian ties have deepened since Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, with the two authoritarian regimes signing a 20-year comprehensive strategic partnership treaty last year. After the Israelis decimated Iran's air defenses in the 12-day war last June, Moscow struck a deal to provide Tehran with advanced man-portable air defense systems. Russia is not neutral in this conflict. Russia has deep financial, military, and strategic reasons to see the United States bleed in the Gulf, and it has the means to quietly make that happen. Now, here are your 3 scenarios for the next 30 to 90 days. I want you to hear these clearly, because these are not speculation. They are the logical outcomes of what the evidence on the ground is pointing toward. Scenario 1, the most likely, is what I would call a dirty deal. Iran's missile and drone capabilities have been significantly degraded, according to U.S. CENTCOM. Iran's ballistic missile capability has fallen by about 90%, and its drone capability by around 95% since the start of the U.S.-Israeli war. With those capabilities depleted and the Iranian economy hemorrhaging, a back-channel negotiation, possibly through Oman or Qatar, produces a face-saving framework. Iran agrees to some form of nuclear monitoring, gets some sanctions relief, and both sides declare partial victory. The strait reopens. Oil comes down from $100, but not all the way. The new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, survives in power. Iran keeps its nuclear knowledge. The region is destabilized, America is poorer. And the whole thing starts over in 5 years. This is the most probable outcome in 45 to 60 days. Scenario 2, moderately likely, is the Kharg escalation. Iran calls Trump's bluff on Kharg Island, either by attacking American-linked energy infrastructure in the Gulf or by making another move against shipping in the Strait. Trump responds by destroying the oil terminal. For decades, Kharg Island has served as Iran's main oil export terminal, historically handling 85 and 95% of the country's crude exports. If that terminal goes down, Iran's ability to fund its government and its military collapses almost immediately. But so does a significant portion of global oil supply. Energy markets go into freefall. Food prices spike worldwide because, remember, a third of global fertilizer moves through that strait. China, which has remained one of the main buyers of Iranian crude despite Western sanctions, faces a direct economic hit and is forced to respond diplomatically or otherwise. This scenario is dangerous, expensive, and potentially destabilizing for the entire global economic order. It is possible within 30 days if either side miscalculates. Scenario 3, the least likely, but the one Trump appears to be betting on, is Iranian regime collapse. The theory is that the combination of military degradation, economic pressure, and popular discontent inside Iran reaches a tipping point, and the IRGC, or the population, forces Khamenei out. Several protesters who once lived in Iran told CNN they see Trump's strikes as an opportunity to help topple the Islamic regime that has ruled the nation since 1979. The Iranian people will finish this regime if Trump continues to put the pressure from the skies, said one protester, who said he spent the first 25 years of his life in Iran. The sentiment is real, and it matters. But the hard strategic reality is this. Given that the Islamic Republic is more likely to continue fighting than to concede, the war's trajectory may prove more protracted and unpredictable than decision-makers in Washington anticipated. Cornered regimes do not tend to collapse gracefully. They tend to lash out. And there is no organized opposition force in Iran today with the structure, the resources, or the international backing to fill a power vacuum. We have seen what power vacuums in the Middle East look like. Libya, Iraq, Syria. The lesson is consistent, and it is brutal. And through all three of these scenarios, one fact remains constant. Preliminary figures stand at 1,444 dead in Iran, at least 15 in Israel, 11 U.S. soldiers, and 19 killed in Gulf states. Those numbers will rise before they stop. Up to 3.2 million people have been displaced in Iran since the war erupted nearly 2 weeks ago, the United Nations Refugee Agency said. 3.2 million people in 2 weeks. That is not a war on a weapons program. That is a war on a country. And in Washington, the constitutional question has not gone away. A resolution to require President Trump to seek congressional approval for any further action in Iran failed to advance in the House, 6 days after the U.S. and Israel launched a military campaign against the Iranian regime. The vote was 212 to 219, largely along party lines. One legal expert argued that, domestically, his actions are illegal and unconstitutional. Whether you agree with that analysis or not, the basic constitutional question is real. Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress, not the President, the power to declare war. That power was not exercised here, and the war powers clock is running. Here's your question for today, and I want you to think about it genuinely before you answer it in the comments. At the moment Trump ordered the Kharg Island strike and issued the ultimatum to Iran, knowing that one wrong Iranian response could destroy the oil terminal and send global energy markets into chaos, should he have been required to get a vote from your elected representatives in Congress first? Not a classified briefing behind closed doors, a real vote, a real debate, on the record in public with their names attached. That question is already dividing people in the comments below this video. Veterans, economists, Trump supporters, Democrats, libertarians, people who have never agreed on anything in their lives, all of them wrestling with the same fundamental issue. Get in there. Tell us where you stand, because that debate matters. Here is what I know after 15 days of this war. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a waterway. It is a question that every American is now being asked without being given a vote. And the answer, whatever it turns out to be, will be paid for in dollars you earned and lives you did not choose to risk. Stay with us. Because next, we are going inside the Strait of Hormuz itself, the 21-mile choke point that now determines whether your gas costs $3 or $6 this summer, and we are breaking down exactly what Iran is deployed there, what the U.S. Navy is sailing into, and what the one scenario is that nobody in Washington will say out loud, but every admiral in the Pacific Fleet is already gaming out. That story drops next, and you cannot afford to miss it.